Hello, I'm Iona.
Hi, I'm Paolo.
And we're here with Leaderboard.
We'd firstly like to acknowledge how privileged we are to be working in the unsurrendered, unceded Coast Salish territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh.
And we're excited to share with you today about Philippine coffee. We are the team behind Kapé, and we love coffee. So let's dive into it.
We've actually been working with coffee farmers from the Philippines for about 17 years, so we're quite proud about that. And we maintain a close personal relationship with them. And we are, of course, fortunate that despite the distance being here in Canada, that we still come back and forth to source coffee from typically women farmers in the community.
Yeah, having been born and raised in the Coffee Mountains, coffee has been part of my life. And I'm grateful that moving to Vancouver, it's a piece of home that I can share with others and continue to connect with my home country and also continue working with the Indigenous and women farmers that we now call friends back home.
If you know, or maybe didn't know, the Philippines is actually one of the best terrains and areas within the coffee belt that grows specialty coffee. We've had a history in terms of coffee since the 1700s, but there has been new theories that coffee has been in the Philippines actually way longer than that, prior to European contact. So coffee has been there for quite some time, and we're really excited to discuss and share with you some details about the coffee that you're about to have.
Right, yeah, so one thing to know about the Philippines, we grow all 4 varieties of coffee. Of course, you're familiar with all of them, like Robusta, Excelsa, Liberica, and the Arabica, our highland coffees. And the coffee growing regions, as Paolo shared, in our country have really that nice elevation for an ideal climate for growing Arabicas. And our lowlands near the lake, near volcanic soil are really ideal for growing different varietals of coffee.
So the coffee that you can actually see on our website comes from predominantly two regions. One from the north, in which we call the Cordillera region, and to the south in the Davao region. So these regions are obviously mountainous from around 1,400 meters above sea level all the way to close to 2,000 meters above sea level.
Yeah, and in the south?
And in the south, yes, of course. The south is roughly from around 1,400 to 1,600 meters above sea level. And it's actually in the foot of, or on the foot of the tallest mountain in the Philippines, which is called Mount Apo. In this area, this area used to be, of course, a typical agricultural land in the Philippines, planting vegetables, and other produce, but the farmers recently discovered coffee and found out that that actually has a bigger potential to change the community as well as to provide a more sustainable livelihood for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I've noticed is typically in the north, in the Cordillera region, that's actually where I was born, they grow Typica and Bourbon varieties of the Arabica, whereas in the south, it's typically Catimor. And yeah, and they've started to also grow Typicas and Bourbons there, but what's common is more Catimors in the south, more Typicas, Bourbons in the north.
Right. So in both the north and in the south, you can find coffees with a variety of different processes, right? So typical, from the washed types all the way to the naturals and the different honeys as well. So you have white, red, and black honeys there too. And so yeah, it's quite exciting to also hear that recently many farmers back home have also been experimenting with various unique processes, such as from anaerobic macerations to really unique ways, such as putting the red cherries alongside banana or papaya peels or fruit peels, and of course sealing them in a bag for a number of days. And we've tried it before, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, so farmers in the Philippines have actually been doing or having this livelihood for many generations now. It's typically inherited, especially in the north, along the Halsema Highway. All of those houses have their own coffee trees, and their backyards are just filled with coffee trees that they continue to prune and plant every year, every season. So we historically, the Philippines, have been exporting coffee. Production has been so much more in many years ago, when the coffee rust affected other coffee producing countries. The Philippines was the one that exported coffees and even surpassed the production levels of Vietnam. Sadly though, what has happened is farmers experience exploitation from middlemen who bought coffee at really low prices and earned from, cashing it out in the local markets. And so farmers didn't have a choice but to, of course, exchange their coffees for cash. And they just didn't really see the value anymore of farming coffee because it's really hard. And you're familiar with this. You have to wait for about 4 years for a coffee tree to mature. Harvest happens only once a year, and it's just so tedious to manually pick the cherries and do all the processing, do all the drying. So they stopped producing coffees for many years, and that was really sad and devastating because it's something that has been part of their traditions for many generations. And so we're glad to see now that Philippine coffee is starting to grow again and production is increasing, although it could still continue to improve. So the work that we're doing with Kapé, directly working with Indigenous and women farmers and their families in their communities to purchase coffee at a sustainable price so that they are encouraged to continue this and see this as really a way to generate sustainable income. And bringing their coffees here to Canada and North America has been really a great honor and a blessing, and something that has been instrumental as well in helping improve how farmers live back in their communities. And they're very much inspired that Canada and now the US can have access to Philippine specialty coffee.
We'd like to encourage you to check out the coffees that you're going to have. Let us know what you think about it, and as well, let us know what you think how potentially the coffees can even be improved. And we can actually send that back all the way to the farmers, because what's unique about Kapé is that we know the farmers on a personal level, so we have direct contact with them, and in a way that they can also continuously improve on potentially the processes that they have, or maybe give them some new unique ideas too, and so that we can continuously elevate the craft, not just from the roasting level for us here in Canada, but also down to the farmers level back home. So of course that's in a way to keep adding value to what they're doing, and of course ultimately down the road it's going to have a positive impact to their families and to their livelihoods.
Right. I think what most people would like to know about are taste profiles of Philippine coffees. So we've gotten this all the time. We get this all the time that people are surprised to hear that there's specialty coffee in the Philippines. They didn't know that coffee exists there, but it does, and you now have a treat of also tasting and experiencing Philippine coffee if you haven't done so yet. So yeah, let's talk about taste. How would you characterize Philippine coffee in terms of taste profiles.
Right. Okay. So of course, in any process, the taste will depend on the process. But of course, in the bigger picture, the terroir, as well as the weather as well. But to me, I find the northern coffees from the Cordilleras, especially the wash types of coffees, to have a really nice kind of sweet, balanced coffee that's really full body or full of body, right? There's a level of depth too that goes into the richness, that you really feel that it's about the richness of the soil, and how meticulous the preparation and the processing of the coffees are. So deep chocolate, dark chocolate, that kind of reminds me of cacao nibs, also with some fruity nuances in the coffees in the north. In the coffees in the south, there's so many different really unique ones, some natural coffees that have hints of tamarind, also some hints of a little bit of jackfruit, so a really unique nuanced smell and taste. And the honeys from the south are really clean, lots of floral notes, and but there's that unique complexity in it. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I like the nice mellow acidities that we get from honey processed coffees. The naturals, of course, that's traditionally how indigenous farmers process their coffees. So you smell that nice earthiness, nice oakiness in their coffees. But what I've found across the board for Philippine coffee, comparing it with different coffees from different regions, is it's approachable. There's something in it for everyone. Like, people are happily surprised to taste and learn that it's Philippine coffee, because they haven't tried Philippine coffee yet, or if they've tried Philippine coffee, it's normally instant coffee or the really strong darkly roasted barako or libericas. We grow a lot of that in the lowlands, Batangas and Cavite in the Philippines, so there's more production, but mass production. But what tends to happen is it gets roasted really dark, and of course people like it with a lot of cream and sugar, and that's how they enjoy their coffee. But that's typically what people think when they hear Philippine coffee. It's either the instant variety,
right,
or the barako. But when you try the arabicas from mountainous regions in the Philippines, the Cordilleras, in Davao, in the south or Mindanao areas, people are happily surprised. There's nice mellow acidity, there's cacao nibs, like chocolate. We call it, actually, we describe one of our coffees as tasting like champurrado, or a chocolate rice porridge, which again, that nice earthiness to it, that just really round and really comforting. And for us, of course, like, it reminds us of home, and we get excited when people from the Philippines who've moved here to Canada, or their parents are from the Philippines and they're born here, and they know of the Philippines, of course, and they taste coffee coming from the homeland. It's like, oh wow, this is great. This just reminds me of being there with my lolo or my grandpa, drinking coffee and having a snack or merienda. So it brings that nostalgia as well, aside from the technical tasting notes that you'll find in Philippine coffee.
Right. And it's also quite symbolic, right? Because coffee is not endemic in the Philippines. It's actually the Europeans that brought coffee in the country.
Theory one,
of course, that's right. But what's quite awesome is that how the indigenous folks back home were the ones that innovated from what was brought to us, right? So I think it's also, in a way, a story not just of how amazing and how the coffee reaches a specialty level, but also about stories of migration, stories of change in the community, and stories of decolonization as well. And for us, that is so important too, to communicate about what the coffee is. So it transcends not just the technical taste and flavor, but also the symbolism and the social aspects behind the coffee. So,
Yeah, and you talk about decolonization, and I said that's theory one, that Europeans brought coffee to the Philippines. There's another theory that actually disputes that. And
well, the first one was actually not a theory. That's well documented. It's actually correct. And this is the theory that you're about to talk about.
So the theory that coffee has always been there, especially in the South. So
The south of the Philippines, especially the southwest, has always been known to be a land bridge with our neighboring country, which is Indonesia. And Indonesia at the time, or before, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was before European contact in the Philippines, that coffee has already been there. And that's why, you've heard of the Sumatran coffees and the Java coffees. They're all from Indonesia, right? And with trade in the southeast of the Philippines through the land border, and not just the land border, but the island highways, as they say, that's the theory is that there has been coffee already there before European contact, right? And it's true, until today, there's actually a big production of typically Excelsa varietals of coffee in the southeast of the Philippines. So,
Yeah, and that's why some people might taste similar notes from Sumatran coffees and Philippine coffees, especially those that are coming from the south, because we share that, maybe the parentage of the coffee coming from Indonesia. So yeah, it's really great to have these conversations about origin, and we're all about putting representation as well for Philippine coffee out there, because historically farmers have had the opportunity to export coffee. It's with a lack of support from governments, and it wasn't a priority in our whole national agricultural plan to push specialty coffee forward. But we hope that things change so that farmers can have a more viable income and have more sustainable livelihoods. And hopefully through the work that we're doing with Kapé as a social enterprise, working directly with Indigenous and women growers, that things change for the better. And it's really great to see how farmers have shifted more into focusing on growing coffee instead of vegetables, because they typically have both. They grow vegetables because it's easier, it's a cash crop. They grow coffee as a seasonal, kind of more intensive, more tedious aspect in their agri livelihoods. But now they're seeing there's more sustainability with coffee if they just put more attention to it in the detail of harvesting and post-harvesting processes. They'll achieve like really great quality coffee, and we want to push for that because we know that they're so capable, they're so passionate about what they do in the farms, and they work as a community. If you just see how they help each other and how they are together, brought together by coffee, it's a social thing. It's of course work, but a work that is made so much more with joy and with love, because they know each other and they connect because of coffee.
What's your tip about brewing coffee?
Right. Yeah. So of course the ratio is important. 1:17 is my favorite ratio, and I like brewing on the Chemex. So with Philippine coffee, it's as I said, it's approachable. There's something in it for everybody. It's easygoing. So having that standard ratio of brewing is great. And also sometimes too, you just follow your intuition when brewing. Even if your scale goes kaput or runs out of batteries, like you can still feel that. And my advisor, my tip is to take it as a meditation. When you're brewing coffee, it's that time for yourself, your time to breathe as well, to not rush, because enjoy that moment. Farmers have toiled so much, and for so many years, so many hands have touched the coffee that you're about to brew, so savor every moment.
My favorite is I'll say it again. My favorite is the V60. So for me, if you're using a Baratza grinder, go for the 15 in the grinder to have the perfect grind size. Also 1:17, and yeah, for if you want to brew the coffee using AeroPress, it's usually a finer grind, of course. I usually would go for 12 on the Baratza grinder, Encore grinder, and then looking at yeah, the Adler technique, right? So I'm pretty sure you can just research what that is, and so yeah.
Great. Yeah. So thank you so much for sitting with us and listening to us share about Philippine specialty coffee. We'd love to hear from you as well. If you've tried it, you know, what did it remind you of? And yeah, just enjoy this season of Leaderboard. Have fun and all the best.
Take care, everyone, and
Take care,
enjoy
everyone.
Philippine coffee.
Take care. Salamat.